Today we're looking at the possibility of a Leafs trade sending Jake Muzzin back to the Los Angeles Kings. Could the New York Islanders be a good suitor for Kevin Fiala in Minnesota? Plus we have more news from the NHL playoffs, some big time injury announcements in Boston, and the Masterton Trophy winner has been announced as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about today. First up, let's recap last night's playoff action. The Rangers have taken a big 2-0 lead over the Lightning in the Eastern Conference Final with a 3-2 victory. Obviously, it's the first time in almost 3 years that the Lightning have lost back-to-back playoff games, and I think it's fair to say that the pressure is starting to get to them here a little bit. Obviously, they're probably happy to be heading back home for the next 2 games. Obviously, the kid line continues to play well for the Rangers, with Hedl, Lafreniere, and Kakko all putting on a good effort as Zibanejad continues to score for the Rangers. Power play is still clicking really good, and of course, Igor continues to be just a little bit better than Vasilevsky. Vasilevsky, I thought, was really, really good last night, and it would have been a much worse score if it wouldn't have been for his efforts. Something else that I found happened that you never really see, we didn't really catch it at the time, it was only on after, but during, I think it was the second intermission, Nick Paul was doing an interview with TVA Sports, and John Cooper called him away from the interview to get into the room right away. So obviously, fair to say that's not something you see very much ever, really. Coaches understand that players are doing media between periods. It's pretty standard, occurrence. But it goes to show that I don't think they're starting to panic. I think they're a more confident group than to let panic set in. But I think they're starting to feel the pressure. And like I said, for the first time in 3 years, they've lost 2 playoff games in a row. And we could possibly see a change here. I mean, the Rangers they seem to be getting better all the time. And the Lightning just have not been able to find their groove since that long layoff. They really found the groove partway through the Toronto series. They steamrolled Florida, and then they had a big break. And then here we are. They just, like I said, the game 2 I think was better than game 1, but still, they're in some serious trouble here. They got to get going, or they're going to be, at risk to lose this series. And unfortunately, teams that go down 2-0 in the conference final or Stanley Cup final do rarely come back. It does happen on occasion, but it's been a long time since we've seen it happen. So we will see. Of course, Avs Oilers go tonight, game 3. The scene switches to Edmonton now for the next 2 games, with the Avs up 2-0. I think the Oilers are going to be making a few changes. Darcy Kemper still out tonight, so we'll see where things go. But this is a huge, huge game for the Oilers. If they lose tonight, getting out of a 3-0 hole is almost impossible at this stage of the playoffs. So we'll see where things go. Should be hopefully an entertaining game. Like I said, from a selfish fan perspective, I want more hockey, more games. So I'm certainly hoping teams like Tampa and Edmonton can make things a little bit closer so these series don't wrap up too quickly. Of course, like I said, we also had the Masterton Trophy announced. That winner is Carey Price of the Montreal Canadiens, who certainly had a long, long, difficult season. This award is for dedication to hockey, determination, perseverance, and all that kind of stuff. And certainly, a guy like Price, well deserving. As I mentioned when I announced the finalist back a couple weeks ago, I was a little bit surprised in a way that Price was one of the finalists, not because he wasn't deserving, because what he's demonstrated by battling through what he has is exactly what this award is all about. I just thought it might be more of a case of him maybe being a more deserving winner next year after the comeback is more complete, assuming that it is, of course. Of course, Kevin Hayes finished second place, also had a hard year and certainly battled through a lot. And Zdeno Chara was in third place. So Price, after battling through everything he did on a personal level, and then of course had to go through the injuries and the recovery. Like I said, he had a lot that he went through, and he's certainly 100% deserving of the award. I just thought maybe might be more of a case for next year, but obviously everybody involved with the voting thought this was the year for Price. And you know what? We do know that his ability to play next year is in doubt. I mean, it's not guaranteed that he's going to play or that he'll be able to play. I think he wants to play. He did say, though, when accepting the award, that his knee recently had I think it's like a plasma type of injection, and he's waiting to see how the knee responds to that. It could be a little bit yet, but hopefully they'll know here in the next few weeks, have a better idea what's going on with the knee. But he certainly has seen some doctors have multiple opinions, and we'll see. He was obviously, couldn't commit at all to playing next year, but it certainly seems like he wants to. So we'll see where things go on his recovery return, or where Montreal ends up between the pipes. Now, as I mentioned, we had some big injury updates announced from the Boston Bruins. This team is going to be going into training camp and in the start of next season really decimated. We already know that Brad Marchand needed a big hip surgery and is out for 6 months. We already also know that we don't know the future of Patrice Bergeron. Is he going to play next year? Is he coming back? Is he not? If he doesn't come back and you're down those two guys, and then they announced that 3 defensemen had pretty big surgeries too. Now Mike Riley is the least, out of the 3, he'll be recovered the fastest, I should say. He had an ankle tendon issue and some bone spurs, so his ankle surgery is going to require a 3-month recovery. We know Matt Grzelcyk, which I had heard about a shoulder injury that he was facing, that he talked about at the end of the season once they were beat out of the playoffs, and his surgery is a 5-month recovery. And then Charlie McAvoy, his shoulder injury and surgery was even more serious, and he's going to need about a 6-month recovery. So Marchand and McAvoy might be out until November to December range. I mean, that's they could miss easily 2 to 3 months of the season. That's a significant amount of time. Like I said, you throw in, and of course Grzelcyk is obviously going to miss the start of the year too. That blue line is going to be decimated now. That's a big hole. Your top line, which is your perfection line, 2/3 of it might not be there. Lots and lots of question marks faced now by the Boston Bruins, injuries and uncertainty of Captain Patrice Bergeron. And I wonder if, I don't know if the state of the team is going to have an impact on his decision, or if it's strictly going to be based off of, I want to play another season or I don't know. Anyways, we'll see. But, I'm sure there's some teams that are looking to jump up into the playoffs next year that are, the next echelon right below them, Boston, right below Boston, like Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa, those types of teams that are looking to, improve and jump up, might be able to grab a spot if the Bruins, are not the same team next year because of all the injuries. So we'll see what happens. The Edmonton Oilers are losing one of their prospects, heading back to Russia. That's goaltender Ilya Konovalov, who was playing in the American Hockey League, but this year was struggling a bit, didn't really have a great showing, and his agency is confirming that he's heading back to play in the KHL next year. Speaking of Russian players, another top Russian unrestricted free agent who's getting a lot of attention around the NHL, forward Andrei Kuzmenko, is starting to do round 2 of interviews. We know that he and his agent Dan Milstein conducted interviews with about 5 or 6 teams back about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and now they're at the round 2 phase. I'm not sure if any teams have been kind of eliminated or have dropped out of the interest level here in this player, but Vancouver is still reportedly very high on his list and still has mutual interest, according to Vancouver media. So we'll see where things go, but I think we're getting a little bit closer to Kuzmenko making a decision. Now, on to the rumor section of the video today. First up, I want to take a look at the possibility, would Kevin Fiala be a good fit with the New York Islanders? Now, this is an Athletic article by Kevin Kurz talking about the Islanders situation here and whether or not Fiala would be a good fit. He consulted with Minnesota writer Michael Russo to kind of ask a little bit about what a package for a trade might look like, to see how things go. We know that based on the Islanders situation, it's pretty clear what they should do this offseason. What Lou will actually do, we don't know, but it's believed they're going to try to add a top 6 forward and a left shot defenseman. That was their kind of gaping holes on the team and the roster this past year. They may look to shake things up a little bit more beyond that, because certainly not all of their veteran players kind of performed up to expectations this year. We know that was part of the issue why they didn't make the playoffs. But Fiala would be an infusion of youth and offensive abilities that this team could certainly benefit from. And Kurz goes on to kind of explain the fact that he could be exactly the kind of player they need. For starters, we know the Islanders are an older team, so Fiala's not. He's only in his mid-20s, so he still has lots of runway left to be a long-time effective player. He's an RFA, so he needs a new deal, coming off an 80-plus point season. So, automatically would be, a real top point producer that they could really benefit from. Now, of course, he felt it was a good fit style-wise. He's a good skater, has a good shot, good playmaker. And the other thing, Fiala's accomplished a lot with his offensive numbers, really improving over the last couple of years, and he's done so without really playing with an elite level center iceman. Now, no disrespect to the guys he's played with in Minnesota. Certainly he's had some time shared with Kaprizov as the other winger on his line, but he hasn't really played with a high-level elite center. So if you paired him with a guy like Matt Barzal, they might be a good pair. Now, on Barzal's case, he has the skills of an elite-level center, but he has not put up the production of an elite-level center. And I think, to be honest, a lot of that just that he hasn't been paired with the right people either. And if they can finally get a good fit for him, I think that would be huge for the team. If they can have Matthew Barzal producing at a higher level. Like, his rookie year is still arguably one of his best seasons, but of course that was Tavares' last year in Long Island. He had a little bit of a different role, a little bit of a different assignment after John Tavares moved on. Obviously, other teams target Barzal's line a little bit more, and for matchup purposes, and he gets a lot more tougher matchups. Hasn't had that high quality wingers to play with, and that all kind of coincides for good numbers, but not great numbers for Barzal. He can do better. He definitely has the skill set, and that we know. We've seen it from flashes. It just we need to be seeing more consistency. And the other thing here too is new head coach on Long Island, Lane Lambert, very familiar with Fiala. Fiala started his career with the Nashville Predators. Well, Lambert coached in Nashville with Barry Trotz before they made the jump to Long Island. So he's had interactions. He knows this player from before. Obviously, he was at a different stage of his career. Both of them were. But he would have had a chance to see this player, up close and personal, and know a bit more about not only, the on-ice part, but the off-ice part, and would he fit in the room, and all those other questions you can ask yourself before pulling the trigger on a big trade. Now, what would a trade for Fiala to Long Island look like? What would it cost them? I think a first-round pick for any kind of Fiala trade, no matter who makes this deal with Minnesota, is going to have to be included. I don't think Bill Guerin is walking away from this without a first-round pick. There's no doubt. And I think he would probably be very much open to it being either this year or next year's draft. I think it depends on the pick. The Islanders are, they're above the middle. Like, when you're around that 13, 14, 15 range, like, there's still some good prospects in that area. So to me, a first-round pick and at least one more good asset, depending on what the asset is something that could be considered. I know for one in the article, Kerr's propositions maybe a first and Anthony Beauvillier. Now, of course, Beauvillier is making $4 million. Another, he's still a younger player. At the same time, is been a little bit inconsistent, but a good player. He's scored some big goals for them over his years there, especially in the playoffs before. But Russo countered with the fact that they may not want a guy like Beauvillier. Not that they don't like him as a player, but they're gonna. The whole point of trading Fiala is to save the cap money. They're going to want more, something more future-based, or something on an entry-level contract, or something to that effect. So, it'd be more likely that they would want a first and maybe like an Oliver Wahlstrom. Now, Wahlstrom is a player that I don't know. I think the Islanders should be cautious on giving up on too soon. I don't really think that he was always given the ample amount of opportunity under Barry Trotz. Trotz is a defensive-minded coach. He's a really great coach. I have no disrespect towards Trotz at all. I just don't know if he was a good fit style-wise for a guy like Wahlstrom. You could say the same about Barzal, too. Certainly not all players and coaches. They can be great in their own right. They're not all going to mesh together and, be harmonious in how they see how the game should be played. So, obviously, Lambert is really an extension of Trotz, but I think he's going to have no choice if he wants this team to take it back to being more competitive and contender, that they're going to have to be more offensive-minded. There's no doubt about it. So clearly, a guy like Wahlstrom, I would caution them on trading him, but getting a guy like Fiala, you're going to have to give up something that the other team sees as valuable. Another prospect would be Aatu Räty. I mean, I know he was at one point, a player in last year's draft that was kind of looked upon as being a high pick, and then he fell in the draft rankings, ended up going fairly into the second round. I think it was a bit of a steal for where the Islanders got him, but he still, to me, looks like a real good player. Expected to make the jump. He'll be coming to North America to play full-time next year. So, again, another prospect you want to be careful with, because you need these guys in the future because, they do have an aging team. Obviously they have some good players. Like they're suspected they might try to move on from a guy like a Josh Bailey, for example. But even guys like Brock Nelson and Anders Lee and Palmieri, like they're not like old, but they're not young. And the Islanders are one of the oldest teams in the league. And if they don't mix in gradually here some ELCs and some young prospects over the next couple of years, they're going to get to the point where they're going to be, really falling in the standings because the team is getting much too older. So they got to be careful here. But a guy like Fiala would infuse a lot of offense immediately and could be a great pair for Barzal, and it might be just what this team needs to infuse some offense. So if you're the Islanders, would you do a trade of a first-round pick and one of those two young players, whether it be Wahlstrom or Ratu, to get a guy like Fiala? And obviously you're going to have to sign Fiala as well. So cap-wise, you might have to do some additional moves. Like I mentioned, including Beauvillier. The Wild may not want that because of cap purposes. So you're going to have to turn around and move a contract or two, which is something I think Lou was planning to try to do anyways. I think, like I said, a guy like Bailey comes to mind as a cap dump. Beauvillier would probably be one of your guys you'd rather hang on to in a sense because he is younger. But they have to find a way to shave some cap off to get these guys in because Fiala's going to come and probably want a fairly substantial contract. So let me know your thoughts on that deal. And there's been a lot of talk. It seems to be the big hype around, a lot of different NHL writers, YouTube, all kinds of social media talk about Jake Muzzin of the Leafs being moved to the LA Kings again. Now, I don't know if Muzzin to the Kings really has a lot of rumors from reputable sources enough to say it's a real possibility it could happen. Now, a couple things I will strongly suggest here, though, is that I do think there's a good chance that the Leafs do consider and try to trade him. And I do think that there's a lot of sense that LA would be a good fit. So I can see the connection. I just don't know if we really had the connection confirmed by enough of the right people to say that it could be a thing. But as I've talked about in different Leaf videos here recently, they're definitely going to have a fair bit of changes, a lot of them cap-driven, some performance-driven. And if you look at their blue line, especially after re-signing Mark Giordano as quickly as they did, they now have 5 defensemen on NHL contracts that are left-shot defensemen. Now, the one that's on there is TJ Brody. He normally plays the right side, so that still gives you 4. So if you go with Brody Riley, for example, as a top pair, like they've had recently, that still leaves you on the left side with some other players. Obviously, Giordano's still there. We have Jake Muzzin, and you have Rasmus Sandin. Well, I know there's been a word out of Elliot Friedman saying that Rasmus Sandin and his agent are concerned over where he fits. He needs a new contract, and they might be hesitant to sign here, saying, well, where's he going to play next year? You signed too many veteran players ahead of him. And I don't think Mark Giordano signed the kind of contract. Yes, it's a sweetheart deal, a cheap deal for the Leafs, but I don't think he did that to sit out all the time. On the right side, they're probably moving Justin Hall. At least that's expected. Possibly try to re-sign Ilya Lyubushkin. So they'll have Brody and Lyubushkin on the right and probably Timothy Liljegren as the other. Now that's assuming they get Lyubushkin done. They might decide to go in a different direction. I'm not sure. But either way, the whole point of trading Muzzin, which would be taking a step back in some aspects, would be to essentially open up room to play Sandin more. Sandin makes a lot less money than Muzzin, so it creates some salary cap space to address other areas. They need to sign either Campbell or replace him. A lot of people think that he's priced himself out of Toronto, so they need a goalie. They probably want to go after another free agent forward. It's going to be tough. They're not going to have any choice here but to move some bodies around. Like I said, mainly due to cap, and it's an unfortunate situation, but it is what it is. So Muzzin going to the LA Kings, if you look at their perspective, well, they could certainly use a lot. Not a lot, but they could use some help on the blue line. There's no doubt that it's an area of focus for Rob Blake this offseason, and obviously they could use a left shot defenseman. He's familiar with the team. They're familiar with him. He played there a long time, had a lot of success, had some good offensive numbers back then too. Maybe they pair him up with Drew Doughty. It could be a good fit. He has some trade protection in his contract, so if he's going to have to waive, that might be one of the places he's more likely to be willing to go to, which makes things easier too. So I don't know for sure. I can't say with any certainty that Jake Muzzin to the Los Angeles Kings is going to happen. But like I said, it gets a cap situation helped out in Toronto. It helps the Kings blue line. They have tons of young players. They're all kinds that they're going to have no choice but to part with some of them to send to, that they could send to the Leafs in exchange for Muzzin. So it helps get them a younger player for the future. It gets the Kings a defenseman that can help now, saves the Leafs cap money. And if he does have to waive, it's probably one of the places he would waive to because it's California, it's LA, and he's played there before. So as much as it might be, something that's not necessarily a sure thing to happen by any means, it does make a lot of sense. So let me know what you think on Toronto possibly moving Jake Muzzin back to the Los Angeles Kings. What would you be looking for a return? What do you think is fair? Which one of their younger players, for example, would be a good fit in Toronto? Should they go more with the draft pick route? I think LA would be inclined to possibly do that deal, but I don't think they'd want to move picks. I think they're going to want to move actual prospect or two that maybe the Leafs could benefit from, especially where they got some prospects from them and not deal that sent Muzzin to Toronto like Sean Durzi. They could probably use another prospect in their system too. So we'll see what happens. But let me know your thoughts on that and everything else today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.